Hello. Long time no see, I know. It's been like literally 2 months since I filmed the last video. I had no excuses for it. I'm lazy. Well, I'm not lazy. I just had a lot of stuff going on. You can see hair's orange now. It is indeed a very sick mullet. I cut it myself. I also got new glasses, and I think they better accentuate my face. As you probably read from the title of the video, this video is going to be about unions, specifically the histories of unions in the United States. Why such a niche topic? Because I wanted to, okay? Because I wanted to talk about it, because I see no one talking about it. And I'm kind of boring. This is literally my whole life, talking about workers' rights. As you can see, very much power to the workers. The workers of the world unite. So today's video is about the history of unions in America. Some unions that are currently in the news are the Writers Guild, which is currently on strike, Starbucks and their union busting, Amazon and their union busting. But I just wanted to go into the history of this, and maybe then you'll understand what is going on in these situations, why these companies are union busting, which is illegal actually, but they still do it because they're billionaires, why they're doing it, and what unions really are. Labor unions first came out of the literal necessity for workplace regulations, wage control, and labor laws, because there were actually none, and your employers could do literally anything they wanted to you, and you just had to deal with it if you wanted to make your 1 penny a week. The earliest recorded strike actually in the United States was before the United States was even founded as a country, and it was in 1768, and it was a group of tailors who protested their employer giving them a wage cut. And the very first union organization, official union organization, was founded in 1794, and it was the Federal Society of Journeymen Cordwainers. And a cordwainer is a cobbler, someone who makes shoes. And in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, many workers demanded a shorter workday because they now had machinery to aid them in their work. And in 1827, in Philadelphia, the Mechanics' Union of Trade Association was founded, and in 1852, the International Typographical Union was founded, and international in this sense literally just means the United States and Canada. And then in the early 19th century, many skilled workers were unionized, and that is something that is a major difference between workers' unions today and workers' unions in the early 19th century, because skilled workers were like tailors, cobblers, people who were doing work that required expert knowledge and training to do. So not any, chimney sweeps, not any light burners, not any, carriage drivers, no one that was doing a job that did not require extensive training on. So why trade unions in the first place? A union gives a picture of a just society and gives hope, I guess, to workers to improve their, conditions, and it gives a sense of brotherhood as well. And in 1866, the Knights of Labor National Labor Union was founded, which reached its most powerful in the mid to late 1880s, and they launched many reform campaigns. More groups became for trade reform versus a trade union, and a trade reform focuses on the long-term improvement. They are two sides of the same coin, but they are still very much separate because they do focus on very different things. Same issues, but different aspirations. And then in the late 1880s, the Knights of Labor trade union ended, and the Knights of Labor attracted workers hoping to improve their immediate conditions with union strikes. Strikes on industry lines, national trade unions. In 1886, they joined to form the American Federation of Labor, also known as the AFL. And the AFL actually denied labor reform any further in the role of struggles of workers. And then around this time, Marxism was on the rise amongst working class citizens, because in 1848, the Communist Manifesto by Friedrich Engels and Karl Marx was published in London, and it just like spread around the world. Marxism taught socialists that unionism was indispensable to improve their conditions and preparing the working class for revolution in many fronts. And founders of the AFL translated this to furnished with weapons which shall secure his industrial emancipation. I don't know what that means, but I wrote it down, so. And then the AFL claimed as a formal policy that it represented all workers. It doesn't matter what skill level you had, doesn't matter what race you were, doesn't matter what religion you were, doesn't matter which country you're from, doesn't matter your gender or sex. But this was a very far cry from what their practices were. In fact, the people who founded the AFL only wanted it for skilled workers. So, as I just mentioned, there was lots of discrimination within trade unions. On the outside, they're like, no, it doesn't matter. You can come, you're welcome. No, that's not how it was. They literally treated women and black people and literally anyone who wasn't white or Asian, we'll get into that, that they were like subpar, and like, they're like, sorry, sucks that you're working at the shirtwaist factory and you think that there's no fire exits. And many craft unions didn't organize like less skilled workers, and either because they didn't see a need for it, or they just were like, no, like they didn't even need a reason not to. Even if they claimed like we're for all workers, they weren't really for all workers. Since your skill level was directly correlated to if you're a woman, if you're black, if you're disabled, if you're very poor, if your ancestors are from a Slavic country, people would not train you, and you would not be able to be under an apprenticeship or any skilled position, because they just simply wouldn't take you because they thought you weren't worth it. So since your skill level directly correlated to these things that they're claiming that doesn't matter, these people, they had nowhere to go. They had nowhere to unionize, and they had nothing really to do to improve their working conditions, because all these labor unions, many of them did not accept less skilled workers. And actually in 1895, the AFL reversed an earlier decision and chartered the whites-only International Association of Machinists. And the color rules spread throughout the trade union movement after this change, and in 1902, black individuals made up barely 3% of total membership, and most of them were segregated to Jim Crow chapters that were for only black people. And with women workers and Eastern European workers, the same treatment was applied to them, and they had segregated chapters, and they were not allowed to fraternize with the white man. The only group that was held equal with who they considered white and who were white skilled men, the only group that was ever held equal to them, like throughout this entire time, they never had any qualm or quarrel with them being in the group that fraternizing with them, was Asian people, specifically Asian men. Asian women were still like discriminated against. Okay, so now onto my man, FDR. Depression, which started on October 29th, 1929 officially, which is the day, Black Tuesday, the day that the stock market crashed and the banks lost all their money, and Herbert Hoover was president. And then in 1933, he stepped down from office because he wasn't doing anything, and he was very overwhelmed, and he was like, I can't do this. He was also a rich white man who wasn't affected by the Depression, and he just couldn't. He really did nothing combat the Depression. Anyways, then FDR became president right after in 1933, and he was president until 1945, when he died at the age of 63, I think, of a stroke. How he survived Yalta, we don't know. None of you probably know what that is. The Yalta Conference, which is when Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt met in Yalta. FDR became president in 1933, and almost instantly he enacted his New Deal. And his New Deal was he was going to make jobs, he was going to repair the economy, and he was going to... Okay, there were 3 R's, okay? I don't remember them, but there were 3 R's. If you ever are driving down a highway or a street and you see trees, like, in perfect lines down, like, the side of the road, he didn't plant those, but FDR made the Department of Agriculture. This is like when national parks were founded. This is when a lot of the departments in the government were founded. This is like when literally most of this stuff happened, changes in government, and that's why he had a 12-year presidency. After FDR died, the government made a rule that you could only be president for 2 4-year terms. No more. Like, they were like, no, FDR was president for too long. During the Depression, the labor rights movement took off. It already was taking off, but during the Depression, it skyrocketed. Membership numbers exponentially grew. Labor unions grew exponentially during this time, and also during this time, more women joined the workforce, and that's another thing that really skyrocketed the workers' movement, because there were more members to join these segregated unions and also more members to join the broader white man's union. And with the anger of workers and with New Deal legislation, there was mass production industry workers striking, because I don't know if any of you have read The Jungle. I mentioned it in my FDA video. The Jungle is a book about working conditions in the meatpacking industry that was very similar to all industrial workers. It was bad because workers were applying for jobs and going for jobs, and they didn't care if they were making money. It didn't matter what age they were, and the owners of these companies and the people who ran these companies were like, this is perfect, because these people, we don't even have to pay them, we don't have to do anything for them, because they would do anything for a job. And craft unions actually hindered the ALF's organization efforts, and John L. Lewis of the United Mine Workers and some of the other members of that organization broke away in 1935, and they formed the Committee for Industrial Organization, and also known as the CIO. And the CIO created auto unions, rubber unions, steel unions, and other industrial unions. And in 1938, the CIO was formally founded as the Congress of Industrial Organizations, and by 1945, after the war, there were more than 12 million people registered to unions. After the war and during this time, people were getting a lot more political, and politically enhanced powers led union workers to split and argue about the policy of nonpartisanship. And as I will see, I have a whole section on the Teamsters. Unions really became a fighting force in any type of election: general election, congressional election, local election, state election, laws. And during this time, union workers really did lean towards Democratic Party. And from 1936 onward, the Democratic Party, like almost 100%, counted and relied on campaigning unions. But organized labor's grip on the industrial industry began to weaken with its political promise in the 1970s. Union workers and union organizations were losing their grip because the organized crime in unions, they're like this. Early 1970s, that began to weaken. And it was set off mainly by deregulating communication and transportation, and with industrial restructuring that had an influx of foreign-made products. And then, since regulated market structures broke down, non-union competition grew, and began bargaining, and plant closings decimated union memberships. And the National Labor Relations Act crippled the labor movement. And a law reform that was presented to Congress to restructure the bill and, make it so unions had a fighting chance to not drown in the sea of capitalism. In 1978 failed. And then in 1980, disaster struck. Former actor Ronald Reagan was elected president. If hell is real, and if people who are not Christian go to hell, I will go there, and I will see Ronald Reagan. And I will absolutely annihilate him, even in the afterlife. And I've said that before, but I stick to that. I will do it. I swear. Ronald Reagan powered anti-union administration. The likes had not been seen since Mr. Warren Harding. I hate Ronald Reagan. I'm going to put something on the wall. It's just Ronald Reagan's face with a bunch of X's on it. Like, if anybody has seen that scene in Ace Ventura when he goes to the house, that's me with Ronald Reagan. That put me in Jim Carrey's shoes. All those pictures of Dan Marino, that's going to be me, but with Ronald Reagan. From 1975, in a 3-year period, from 1975 to 1978, union membership fell by over 5 million. Manufacturing union force dropped below 25%, and mining and construction, as I said before, was decimated. And there was really barely any union members left because there were barely any workers left in these fields. And really, only public sector unions held strong because these jobs weren't threatened by overseas production and industrialization.
Oh, it's the next day. The audio was probably fucking horrible in this video because I'm on my Lenovo computer. I'm editing right now, and it is right here that my microphone stopped recording. And so the audio from here on until the very end of the video is from my phone, and it's pretty grainy, but there's nothing I can do unless I want to refilm the entire section. I really don't want to, so apologies for that. I don't know what happened. It just kind of dropped off, but it gets, at the very end, I realize it, and I fix it, but, yeah, so just letting you know.
And by the dawn of 1990, less than 17% of workers were unionized, and that is less than half of the number of unionized workers in the 1950s. In 1990, though, labor unions were very much more diverse. Like, in the 1930s, they were only white men. And then by the 1990s, though, there were a lot more diverse union organizations. And in 2018, there were 14.7 million wage and salary workers unionized, and over 25% were women and 28% were black. So the people who have been underrepresented for all eternity are more unionized because these people are more likely to be exploited. Now, this is going to be a pretty short section. I just have a couple of people here that are very important in the labor movement. So first, we have Samuel Gompers, the first and longest serving president of the AFL, which we talked about earlier, the American Federation of Labor. Mr. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was president of the United States from 1933 until he kicked the bucket in 1945. And we have Jimmy Hoffa, the president of the Teamsters, until he disappeared mysteriously in 1975, and we'll get into that. Another Ace Ventura reference I have coming up. If anyone watched the movie, when he's in the heavy metal club and then he goes to the basement, and then the guy is messing with, that's the Norwegian whaling fleet. I'm studying the new directional coordinates. They'll find Jimmy Hoffa before they find any humpback whales. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Jimmy Hoffa. Even though I would not call him the man, the myth, or the legend, he was kind of like a horrible person. So this is the final chapter, and this is actually the longest portion of the video because I have literally, it's 3 pages of notes. How I found out about the Teamsters, well, I'm a very big union supporter, 110%. I was a very big person in the Teamsters, which is it's the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and Teamsters are truck drivers, but it's not just like drivers anymore, it's really like so many more things, but it's just stayed being the Teamsters. Did I figure out who Jimmy Hoffa was from watching that BuzzFeed Unsolved episode? Yeah, I did. And what are you gonna do about it? What? Like, I am a Ryan Bergara and Shea Bidet stan. Alright, so per the Teamsters website, they say, quote, "The Teamsters are America's largest and most diverse union. In 1903, the Teamsters started as a merger of two leading team driver associations. These drivers were the backbone of America's robust economic growth, but they needed to organize to wrest their fair share from greedy corporations. Today, the union's task is exactly the same." And actually, UPS workers are like members of the Teamsters. And they're actually, on their website, they're like organizing a strike. So slay, UPS workers. So the Teamsters were founded in 1903 and grew largely during the Depression. The president of the Teamsters from 1907 until his retirement in 1952 was Daniel Day Tobin. And that's a long ass time. That's so long. And they had an election every single year. This man was elected every single year from 1907 to 1952. He did have some opposition in the first couple of years after his election, but then he was just like, no one ran up against him, so that he was literally, they had to vote for him. And I'm like, that is so long. You could not catch me working somewhere for almost 50 years. Couldn't. But Teamster priorities did shift a little bit from wrestling from greedy corporations. I mean, they still did that, but they were infiltrated by organized crime, and infiltration by organized crime dominated the Teamster agenda throughout the 1950s. And they suffered from extensive corruption even since its formation, but like that, the extent of the corruption did not come to light until like Daniel J. Tobin was like out of office. So in 1929, the Teamsters of Chicago actually approached Roger Toohey, the gangster himself, and asked for his protection from Al Capone and his Chicago band, because Al Capone was trying to control the unions in Chicago. And widespread corruption within the Teamsters came to light after Tobin retired, and that was over 50 years of the organization's founding. So, and while Tobin was president, man was he racking it in. He said, we love corruption, we love it. That was literally all that man did. I'm sure he did great things for the union. I'm sure he did great things for the organization. But the man corrupt as every single president of the United States. And then the president of the Teamsters after Tobin was Dave Beck. He was president from 1952 to 1957. What happened in 1957? You may be asking yourself. Well, I'll tell you what was happening in 1957. Mr. Jimmy Hoffa, sailing with the humpback whales himself, challenged Beck. And what he did to challenge him, because the prestige of office that was the president of the Teamsters, like I don't think there is an equivalent to it today. In his attempt to unseat Beck, it caused a national scandal, and it led to 2 congressional investigations, several indictments for fraud and other crimes against Beck and Hoffa, and strict federal legislation and regulations regarding unions, and it even launched the political career of Mr. Robert Kennedy, the future Attorney General, and brother of Mr. JFK. And father of fucking wretched demon himself, RFK Jr. In October 1956, Hoffa met with Johnny Dio in New York City, and the two men conspired to create as many as 15 paper locals to boost Hoffa's delegate totals to unseat Beck. And Beck challenged the authority of the United States Senate to investigate the Teamsters, which caused Senate to establish the Select Committee on Improper Activities in Labor and Management with broad subpoena and investigative powers. And declining working conditions in the freight industry, unhappiness among members employed by the UPS, United Parcel Service. This led to the development of Teamsters for Democratic Union and Professional Drivers Council, better known as PROD, in the 1980s. And the Teamsters for Democratic Union, TDU, won local offices within the union, although International Union often attempted to make victories null by marginalizing the officer or union who was elected, or the union that he was a part of or was elected by. And the TDU grew greater with reforms enforced by the consent decree it had entered into in 1989 on the eve of trial on a suit brought by the federal government under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. The decree required direct election of international officers by the membership to replace indirect election by delegates at the union's convention. It's basically like erasing the Electoral College. That's what they did to the Teamsters. And delegates at the union's 1991 convention balked at amending the Constitution. And this decree might not have been possible if not for Roy Williams, who described his own dealings with organized crime as a secretary-treasurer of a union in Kansas City and as an officer of the International Union. This decree also gave the government the power to install an independent review board with the power to expel any member of the union, which the IRB proceeded to exercise far more aggressively than Teamsters officials expected. So basically, the government weaseled their way in there and manipulated it, like they always do. The government was pursuing a civil case against the union as an entity, and it was also indicted Presser, president of Teamsters, the successor of Williams, for embezzling funds. And then Presser resigned in 1988, and he actually died before his trial began. So he was succeeded by William J. McCarthy. Conclusion. Unions in America, like, it's been an integral part of workforces since before the country was even founded, when it was a colonial entity. Still today, workers are getting exploited. Like, a union, they do so much, and they have done so much. But still today, like, companies and mega corporations and billionaires are manipulating workers, and they're union busting and they're firing, and they can do this because the government doesn't care. Like, I can't express enough how in cahoots the government and these large mega corporations are, and how, like, Starbucks, let your workers unionize. Amazon, let your workers unionize. The WGA is on strike right now, and the UPS is going on strike soon, per the Teamsters website. The government is like, no, we're gonna lose money if they go on strike. I'm mind controlling you to stop being so fucking dumb. Like, so that's the history of unions in the United States. Yeah, I wasn't screaming this time, so hopefully the audio is a lot better. If the audio sucks, I do thoroughly apologize. But yeah, my next video, I'm hoping, will actually be in a month. Like, I said that this video should be up in a month, and it's been 2 months. But my next one should actually be up in a month. I'm gonna start working on the script, like, after I edit this and I publish this, so I'll be done with it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Missy again did not make an appearance. Missy is my cat. I swear to God I have one. Like, I swear I have her. You saw her in my first video, or you should have actually, because she made a little appearance in that one. Yeah. So have a great day. Have a great night. Whatever time you're watching this. Maybe this was just put on in the background. What? When did this stop recording? And really, only public sector unions held strong because these jobs weren't threatened by overseas production and industrialization. How can you do that? It's the noon bell. Come on. Oh my God. It stopped fucking recording. My microphone stopped fucking recording. So that's so fun. That's so fun and fresh. That's so fun and fucking fresh. Let's see how long ago that was. On my, that was at 11:22. That was like over 20 minutes ago. So for 25 minutes of this video, we're gonna have no fucking audio. Oh my god, the entire Teamsters section has no audio. Okay. So that's fun and fresh. I don't know why it stopped recording. Are you kidding? Why did it stop recording? Dead. Why did it stop recording? That's so horrible. No. Okay, so it stopped recording. So I guess I'm just gonna do rethink my life choices. Why does audio hate me? Like, I don't understand what I did to make my microphone hate me. Okay, well, I guess the audio was horrible at the last 25 minutes of this video. Because my microphone stopped recording. Anywho, have a great day. I'm gonna edit this and try to salvage whatever audio I can off my phone, but it's probably not gonna be good. Ah, God, it's probably horrible. Oh my God. Anyways, peace.